Good morning, Anne.
Good morning.
Thanks for being with me today. I'm really excited to have a conversation with you about NEWMA. So I've been working with the CA Lawton company for years already, and I didn't realize everything that your organization does. I'm wondering if you could tell us today a little bit about yourself, your background, and a little bit about NEWMA, please.
Sure. Well, what's amazing is if you would have asked me 16 years ago if I would be running a nonprofit, I would be like, you're crazy. But it's really evolved. I was hired originally to meet with CEOs about their current and future workforce needs. And one of those first meetings was with a company called EMT International. And Paul Rauscher, the owner there, said, I'm so sick and tired of having all these great job openings and nobody wanting them. And is there any organization trying to change the image of manufacturing? So long story short, in June of 2006, we brought 12 companies together to form the Northeast Wisconsin Manufacturing Alliance. And now, 15 years later, we have over 300 members, 200 being manufacturers throughout Northeast Wisconsin that actually employ over half of the manufacturing workforce in the region.
That is remarkable. Thank you. And I'm really curious too about your background because it sounds like this was an unexpected path for you. Could you tell us a little bit about where you came from before you joined NEWMA?
Sure. Well, I actually have lived in all four time zones. And so I'm a vagabond. So my background's in, my undergraduate is in public relations. I started my career selling clothes. Then I sold encyclopedias door to door because we lived in Oregon. There were no jobs. I worked for a staffing agency. I've sold radio ads to then working for a chamber of commerce and also did event management, putting on home shows throughout the country, to working at a college, working with adults that were returning back to college. And then Sylvan Learning Center was the job before this, where I was kind of like the principal. It was an after-school tutoring program. So I have a pretty eclectic background. And since having this job, I also have my master's degree in educational leadership. So what's cool is my job has so many of those little components, from helping people find employees from the staffing agency to doing big events where I did the event management company, to working with schools. So it's amazing how everything has come together with all those past jobs.
Wow, that is fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing. I had no idea you had such a diverse background. And I have to say, Manufacturing First was such a fantastic event this year. It was so nice to be in person with people. I loved it. And not just because I won golf clubs. I mean, I loved all of it. The golf clubs was a nice bonus. Okay, so let me ask you, with your diverse background, I'm curious, do you see any particular education or a mentorship or a program or something that you feel really applies to what you do today?
I think it's being open to trying and being available to do lots of different things. My job is definitely not doing the same thing every day. And so having all that background, it's funny, people ask, oh, did you work for a manufacturing company? Well, my first job in high school, I was a receptionist for a manufacturing company and never was in manufacturing again, less helping at the staffing agency we worked with, Hewlett Packard. So being really just open to trying different things. And it's amazing how all those different skills that are learned are being able to use now.
Oh, yeah. You never know how your skills are going to be transferable. But I appreciate too that you said open. I think that's one thing I'd like to see a little bit more of in our region is a little bit more open-mindedness to take in information from different places and spaces and a willingness to change. Let me ask you, what is something that you wish manufacturers knew or were doing today, particularly in our area?
Maybe two things, can I, instead
Sure.
of one? One is being open to hiring part-time employment.
Okay.
So many companies only want to hire full-time, and there's this huge group that only want to work part-time that are being ignored. And especially when we look at the hospitality and retail industries being contracted because of COVID, there's this group of people that would be great. Yes, you'll have to hire 2 or 3 people compared to the one full-time person, but that is such a huge group that are not being tapped. So that's one thing that I can appreciate. It is difficult to try to manage shifts and so forth, but you're missing on a huge population.
Yeah.
Second,
I agree.
Second is Industry 4.0. Companies really need to take their companies now into digital transformation. And they're not competing with the guy down the street, but globally. And this is where this is going. And so companies, so many times, and especially with the skill shortage and not having enough people, people are so focused on getting the widget done, making the widget, and not having the time to really invest and learn. But Industry 4.0, they need to take the time, because that's where our world is going, and they're going to be able to do more with less people because there aren't any people. And so that's another thing, is having companies really invest in learning about how technology can help them.
Oh, those are 2 fantastic points. Thank you so much for sharing. Both of those hit me as well. I worked for a manufacturing company for 5 years before I really got my own business going. And that was a big part of it for me. As a new mom at the time, I did not want to work full time. And we know that there's a lot of parents who have stepped back from the workforce in the last couple of years. And I think the same thing. I think there's a lot of those who would be willing to step back into the workforce, but are looking for part-time, looking for more flexible hours, which can be a challenge for manufacturing to fill that need. Thank you.
Huge.
And 4.0, absolutely. That is something that I appreciate about Lawton, is that they're very proactive in their technology and their advancement and trying to reach forward. But yes, a good reminder, global marketplace. We can't just think hyper local for some of these things. So really appreciate that reminder. Thank you. So I want to ask then, along those lines, what are you seeing for the near future? Let's say 2022, the next couple of years. What do you predict for manufacturing for our community?
Well, companies, and we are doing annual study, and we actually had over 100 companies take that study in our area. And a couple of the highlights are companies are hiring significantly. And unfortunately, trying to find that talent is a huge issue. In fact, we've done the study over the last 12 years, and this is the highest percentage of companies saying they can't find the talent they need in 12 years. Yikes. Another thing that we saw in the study is that companies are very bullish on 2022 for sales. And so they see that market share, customer penetration, sales all going up significantly. So that's all good. So lots of good things, but you know what? A lot of companies responded that they have supply chain constraints. And that's going to still be a huge issue in 2022. And so companies are going to need to be thinking things a little bit differently, is maybe working with their other suppliers and saying, what do you have in your inventory, or other manufacturers, and seeing if you can help find some things that way, non-traditional means. So those are some of the things that are going to be happening in 2022.
Yeah, and that flexibility piece, that can really be a challenge in manufacturing. I thought that was so interesting too, again, at Manufacturing First, just going around and talking to different people in their booths and ask that question about, what are your supply chain issues right now? What are the struggles with? And it was so interesting to hear the responses. I think that's something that would be really nice too, for manufacturers to be able to communicate with each other, because they can ask those questions and they can learn what other folks are doing. I had one company tell me, I was so inspired by this woman. She told me she was really impressed by her boss because he saw that there was going to be an issue in getting some of the steel products they would need. So they stockpile. So, I think it's really being attentive to what's going on, and then being creative, being flexible. But I like that point too. Ask them what they do have. What do they have? What can we work with? Maybe we can't work on this, but can we work on that? It's really hard in manufacturing because a lot of our companies are just not set up that way to be that flexible.
It's so true. And that's why we have to think outside the box
Mhm.
because the current box isn't working, right?
Yes, thank you. Well, and that's why too, I'm so excited to have NEWMA as a resource, because these are things that you're hearing from so many different organizations that can provide an interesting perspective. So, I don't want to make assumptions here, but I'm going to guess that you would be okay with these companies calling you and asking you some of these questions.
Oh, most definitely. We want to be a resource. When we first started, one of the key components, we wanted to be the voice of manufacturers. So we want to be the go-to place that if you have a question, come to us. And we're always happy to, if I don't know the answer, I can help you find the answer.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much.